Whenever man is straight, you can just hear that walk way. Oh, can you see that snake man in the garden? The one that tricks you around and you realizing I'm trying to talk, and that image on the cross, everyone what you believe. He's the chief of a revelation, being not mistaken, the real Satan. And that's him. Your faith, your shining, see you. He comes to you a bit of good. Cause his only life is in your mind. Wrong and understood. If you were just start believing in truth and reality, it takes easy life away. But as long as you keep using him, he'll keep using you. You decide. Does he
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, thank you for joining us this morning. Yeah, I think it's still morning everywhere in the 50 states. Alhamdulillah, may Allah continue to keep us together, going and growing. Alhamdulillah, we just aired yesterday's recording of Live Jummah from Masjid Wortheen in Oakland, California. It's the 10th installment on the subject of responsibly invest yourself. That's the overall topic at that point, dealing with wealth as one of the 5 main pillars to uphold and establish ummah, of those family, intellect, religion, self, and property or wealth. And that's where we are right now. We're on the other side of the hill. I don't know how near we are to the end of the subject in particular, but inshallah we will get there by Allah's grace and according to His will. We pray. Vision off my teeth. Well, alhamdulillah, as always, we want to start out our morning with your comments, with your feedback, with your input. So push one on your phone. And for those of you who are waiting for Brother Mark's not going to be on this morning. They're having an unveiling or an opening, a grand opening of a weekend school. I believe it's in St. Louis. So he's not with us this morning. We know we can usually count on him for the inaugural statements after the broadcast. Well, he's not here this morning. So if you want to step into the gap, it would be welcome, as always. But, we're also ready always to move on down the road if there's no comments from you. So on the Facebook, YouTube side of it, I'm not looking at the title particularly, and also those of you at Facebook and YouTube, I don't actually see the comments. I see the comments when they show up here on the StreamYard platform. But the StreamYard platform is the one that brings them all together. So I'm not directly on Facebook, not directly on YouTube. That is, you're seeing me now. It's not that I can see the comments that you make in that way. Those that do come through, when I am paying attention on this level, I do see them and I post them up and acknowledge them. Hopefully, if you're seeing, you should be able to see my acknowledgement of your comments, like Khalik, Brother Rick, and Al-Islam in the United States, and my brother Sydney Sterling, Mahdi, alhamdulillah, Red Hot Chili Pepper, alhamdulillah, Brother Jerome, Anthony Abdul Haq, ever present, And my dear brother, Melvin's got a punch tool. Alhamdulillah. So inshallah, those little bits are there. Let me give you one more shot. Blog talk. Oh yeah, good. We got the mouth in the South. That just came off the top of my head. I was trying to figure out, okay, what I do with Monterey. We got Monterey. Okay, Monterey is in the South. Okay, let's go with the mouth in the South. How you doing?
Alhamdulillah. I managed to remember. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, that was this cool. Well, I missed part of it yesterday, and so I wasn't expecting to be lit up so much today. But the Rosetta thing, this is, when I say that, I mean you definitely don't have to put the light on this one again and go to the archives quickly to get the list. But the whole Rosetta, Town Rosetta, the example of Uma, just such an example of what the 13, with the easier thing.
Right.
Once again, and the whole Rosetta thing is just so fascinating. I appreciate you bringing that, and also the don't eat up your property and vanity. You know, that's something that if I was just to read, doing a reading or something, I wouldn't have, anywhere close to this perspective. But that was really great too. So thank you, man.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you. Inside track. I hope you got. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. I was just saying, I'm really looking into the Rosetta thing, and I just thought that was so powerful.
So you know the book, the book that I referred to, right?
The one was I got so many
outliers.
Outliers.
Malcolm.
Yeah, I have outliers. I don't have the name. Was it Blackwell or something like that?
No, Malcolm Gladwell. Gladwell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And how are you spelling outliers?
Outliers.
Oh, well. L-I-E-R.
Like out,
Okay. Yeah.
Got it? All right. Assalamu alaikum. All right. Thank you, Georgetta. Alhamdulillah. Let's go ahead and share some added content this morning. I realized and latched on to the fact that you can share videos. So I have this written down. Rather, I have these new little apps that put me in a position now to be able to share these videos. So I'm going to have a lot of fun with that, and so we go along for a ride. I want to share today, particularly. I really just want to expose you to some things that quote unquote my mind has been exposed to, and that inform, meaning shape and impact and influence some of the way that we interpret, see things, and the like, especially and with regard to this matter. So the point is, I'm sharing. Say, okay, you heard me talk about the Gini coefficient. That's one of the first things I'm going to share. I'm going to just play Dr. Jordan Peterson's round figures 10-minute clip on the Gini coefficient, so you'll hear it from the professor himself. What you heard from me in the Jumu'ah is a summary of the very thing, but it's also good to hear it from the original source. Then we're going to go on to speak about the ruby wasp and the caterpillar. We're going to have that piece, inshallah, and then also we're going to go on to the private prisons piece, and then also we're going to speak to the Jacobite. Let's just put it like that. the sources of ideology, philosophy, perspective, mainly coming out of the Egyptian mystery systems that have connections with why things are the way they are. Because the recipe is a recipe that's an ancient recipe, right? Mashallah, I pray Allah gives us the life and the time and the opportunity to really go to it, because we have to talk about, Hellenism. We have to talk about Greeks. We have to talk about how that knowledge is still at work today, and has been at work for thousands of years, literally. And Imam Muhammad Rahimahullah, he did so much to let us know, look out, this is what's really going on behind the scenes. Heliopolis, he told us about Heliopolis. You and I, we greet each other in this culture is a hello, right? What is that? A hello, right? And so many things. So let's just, as we're doing now, I'm coming to the state where it's like, okay, yeah, we'll just cover as much as we can, and then after that, that's it. Then we'll put a comma on it, and we be back next week, inshallah. So let me start by sharing with you my just the notes, so you can see where I am with respect to the notes themselves. And firstly, as you see, we started based on the verse 429. I don't know if we're going to get to it. I'm going to say it anyway and move on, because we're not going to be able to touch on everything. But as Georgetta was just saying, the idea that having mentioned this as I've mentioned it, seeing it as I've seen it, and sharing it, then you say, oh, I never would have looked at it that way. And it's really the same way for me, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then I get reminded by that very way of seeing of the eternal timelessness of the Quran. We know that the Quran is the last revelation from the creator of the heavens and the earth. That means that the Quran is going to take care of every situation in the life of humanity, meaning it has something to say about every permutation in the human situation for the rest of time. Okay, we got this AI going on right now, and there's some peculiar things related to AI, and there are controversies, and there's anxieties and stress, and there's hopes and fears around AI. Well, Quran has something to say about that. Maybe not directly in the sense, man, maybe directly in the sense of algorithms and all the rest of that, but it has much more to do. It has much more to say about how the impact of this new tool, for example, how it impacts human life, human destiny, the will of God, and the plan for man in the will of God. And here comes AI. Well, it comes into the world of human beings, right? And so human beings have to respond and react to it, and human beings have to get the benefit and avoid the harm of it, and we have to discover the benefit and recognize the harm, and then we have to do those things that relate to it. So the Quran has to say something about that. It has to, that is, it has a response, it has a reply, it has an attitude, it has a recommendation to make to us with regard to that. And it's for those people who have some sense of the impact of it, as I remind you about Dr. Abdul Hamid Abu Suleiman, that the failure of the Islamic leadership, so many centuries ago, led to the consequence of Muslims falling into their own dark age because of the failure of the leadership to keep up with the new technologies and being aware of and having the foresight into the impact of that new technology on the living systems of the Muslims, and not keeping up in that way, then quote unquote Muslims fell off for that period of time. Okay, so which is to say that Al-Islam, Quran, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, God himself through this way of life, Al-Islam, has something to say about everything. everything that impacts the life of a believer, everything that impacts the life of a Muslim, everything that impacts the life of a human being. And the Quran has that for all time. So now when we look at the hip hop lifestyle and the life in the hood, and as long as that those 400 years seem to us relative to the life and experience of the Atlantic slave trade, Middle Passage, and the peculiar system of slavery, chattel slavery in America, Al Islam Quran has something to say about that, and the truth about it, right? Uh, I'm going to avoid going down that cul-de-sac right now, but there's hadith very straight about God, the slave master, the slave seller, etc. They have a very special place in God's judgment, and it's not a good place in God's judgment. In God's judgment, but everything, like everybody that was involved in that process, to the detriment of the people, Allah says, "I'll deal with him." This is hadith. I'll deal with him. So in the context of every matter of life, in every existential situation that Muslims, human beings, but Muslims, because we have the Quran, we have Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, meaning we have available to us every answer to every problem that we're ever going to face. And so when we talk about the problem of the hood, right, and the problem of the blight and the crime and violence and neglect and ignorance, etc., Al-Islam absolutely, positively has something to say about that. And in the largest sense, okay, not in a cursory way. And this verse 429 is just one example of that. And so therefore, the fact that it's in Nisa, it's in the chapter in Nisa, the women, right? And then when you talk about 429, I'm not even dealing with the numbers per se, and I'm sure there's a lot to be derived from understanding what's happening with those numbers. In any case, as I continue just to follow the logic of the situation, speaking to how many harmful things and how much deterioration happens in the light of living a lifestyle where you eat up your properties in vanities and you kill each other. And when you take the mix, when you take the multiplicity, the multiplicity of problems and the multiplicity of diseases that come out of taking and making those wrong steps from an economic perspective, and the world that creates that, you do get that transgenderism as also a part of the problem that affects that very lifestyle, because being gangster and gay is finding a way into that whole life. When we're talking about Hitman, that was in that J-Lo and Soprano dude movie, whatever that movie was they were in. I can't think of the name of it. Jennifer Lopez and the guy that plays the Sopranos, he was a hitman and gay in that movie. Can't think of it. That's becoming to each his own thing in hip hop and so-called gangster life, right? So in this verse here, where it's from the chapter entitled "The Women," and so all the problems, the problems, the diseases, and again, I always refer to 4:119 in the Quran. It says, "I will deface the very nature and have them with unnatural desires." This is what the Quran speaks to. But we're not going to stay there. I'm just saying that's just one more step when you look at it. Once all the natural relations are broken, with those broken natural relations, it's just like a body. A body suffering from cancer has to do with the cell structure not functioning according to its natural way. So in the disease state, that creates problems in the body. So, in any case, let's stick with where we want to go this morning, just to amplify it. So we see in my note where it says wax on, wax off of why we need to obey Allah and establish an economy supporting our destiny in the interest of social reform as a major part of the the major part of the solution to the historic problems in the Black community. So it's like, here's the deal. Do what God tells you to do, and you will solve the problems that have, let's call it, followed you throughout your whole history. Just do what God told you to do, and you will solve all this whole laundry list of problems that you say need to be solved in the Black community. Just do what Allah told you to do. And in domino effect, it will cure this and cure that and cure this and cure that. Okay? But you have to obey Allah. Oh, just do what Allah. So Allah says, eat not up your properties among yourselves in vanities. Okay, so stop trying to flex and stop trying to floss and stop trying to impress me with a status of your car, your clothes, your jewelry, etc. Stop. That's what God is telling you right there, because you're eating up your property amongst yourselves in vanities. Okay, that's one. Stop that. That will solve. How many problems will that solve? Right? And said, let there be traffic and trade amongst you with mutual goodwill. Create an economy of your own. Yes, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's of the world, the Marcus Garveys and so many others in our history in contemporary times who have, sweated and died trying to get us to do for self, right? But we won't do it, right? And so there's something very serious. So that's when we start getting to the cockroaches and the ruby wasp. We'll get to it, inshallah. There's something seriously wrong with us, that generation after, when I say seriously wrong, I mean it's diseased. I say seriously wrong. It's not just a moral. It's not just a moral question. It's like, we just don't have our morals right. We just don't have our moral sensibilities, our moral values straight. No. There's something that has been injected into us that has intoxicated our minds and distorted our reality in a way that we don't understand as a people. And we perpetuate. We won't get to talk about this today, but you all who, you go ahead and look and check things out for yourself. I want you to look into the guinea worm. Because I'm going to talk a lot about nature, right? The heading that we put on was a predator, prey, and the prison pipeline. I think that's the title that we put on our Facebook, YouTube piece: Predator, Prey, and the Prison Pipeline. So the guinea worm. So the guinea worm is another example that inshallah, mashallah, I don't intend to get into right now. But you can find this. Look up this book. You can have audio or hardback or paperback, whatever. Called Influencers. I believe it's the Influencers. You can look it up. If it's not Influencers, it's Influence. But I'm pretty sure it's Influencers. And it's the guinea worm. It's whatever you do. It's look up guinea worm and you got it. I won't go into it, but it's just talking about how there are forces in nature or features of nature, creatures of nature, which are signs and examples for us of the good and the bad. You have things that show us, okay, this will happen in the human world, and when this happens in the human world, we call it a bad thing. But it is something that happens in the human world. But it's modeled in nature, and we're going to get to that when we talk about the wasp and the caterpillar and the like. But the guinea worm is one we won't talk about today. But I want you to go ahead and look it up, and you'll find that it has its own way of getting the human being to do what it wants the human being to do. That creature, the guinea worm, gets the human being to do what they want it to do in order to perpetuate the survival of the guinea worm themselves, by creating a condition in the human being that forces the human being to do exactly what the guinea worm wants it to do. And if that human being doesn't come to recognize and respond according to the I have to call it the counterintuitive slash unnatural response to where it seems like I ought to do this, I ought to do that. Well, that's the very thing that keeps the problem going. And you have to not do that very thing that it seems every part of you is saying, that's what I ought to do. But no, you have to not do what seems to be the natural thing for you to do. Because if you do the thing that seems to be natural for you to do in the attempt to solve your problem, you are perpetuating the problem that you're having. So that's why, I know there's a lot to it, but study the guinea worm, get that guinea worm information, and then you'll see that, especially in the book. The book explains it. It explains it quite well. Okay. So, but let there be traffic and trade amongst you in mutual goodwill. So that's what God does. Establish your own economy. Establish your own economy. Whose economy? The economy of righteousness. Establish an economy of righteousness, right? Why? Why? So that you can employ your young people. Let's just start with that. So that you can employ your young people. So they don't have to believe that the only way for them to make money is to be criminals, right? That's let there be traffic and trade amongst you mutual goodwill. The more you have businesses and the more those businesses are networked, then the more powerful those businesses are by virtue of the network. And also, the greater the economy, the more you have businesses linked together. So you have to create more businesses and link them together, create more businesses and link them together. And that's your economy. And your economy is multiplied simply by moving the money from store A to store B to store C to store D, right? I can bring $20 to that marketplace that has 4 stores in it, just as an example. I can bring $20 to the marketplace that has 4 stores in it. The network is a network of 4, right? And so I bring $20 in there, right? So then that $20 that I spent with them, store A spends it also with store B because they're streamlined, they're connected, they're mutually supported, traffic and trade with mutual goodwill. Okay, so I take that 20 that came into my store, I'm A, and then somebody else is store B. So I take that 20 and I spend it with store B. And then store B spends it with store C, and then store C spends it with store D. So $120 came into the system, right? But that 20 went to 4 different stores. So that $20 becomes $80 from an economic perspective because it's on the income sheet of store A, the income sheet of store B, the income sheet of store C, the income sheet of store D, right? And so if that $20 was spent with store A and store A had invested $10 in the widget that was that they were paid $20 for, his investment was $10, and then $20 came in, which is what he was selling it for. So now he's profited by $10. He's got his $10 back, and he's profited by $10. All right. So he's made a $10 profit. He hasn't lost anything because of the fact that he's getting back the $10 that he originally invested. All right. Well, then that same thing happens in my example. The same thing happened 1, 2, 3, 4 times, right? So the economy in that one exchange that's an $80 economy. From what? From $20. All right. Okay, so it can be 20 million, right? And the billions and billions that Bilalians spend in other economies is what gives them their life, right? And so so when you see the ruby wasp and the cockroach, particularly, well, it's really the same. Ruby wasp and the caterpillar and the ruby wasp and the cockroach, same thing. So just keep that picture in mind, and I'm going to show it to you in nature, how nature is doing that very thing, and how those people who exploit this ignorance and vulnerability in Balalians and mean to keep it that way, with the support of the twisted hip hop community that doesn't have an interest in a destiny, a positive, affirmative, healthy destiny for their people or anybody else, right? Are used to preserve this condition, right? We're going to get to that, inshallah. Okay, so, but the main point to be made here is just do what God tell you to do and you'll solve all your problems. That's what I'm saying. Do what God tell you to do, because I mentioned the transgender, keep on moving, but I mentioned this: how come the marriages are not happening? How come the relationships are not stable? And how does homosexuality, for example, become so expansive? It's not just the commercial industry and whatever, and the promotion of all the rest of things the things that we look on the outside and we say yes because they're promoting more of this and more of that. Yeah, that's quote unquote that's a part of it, but there's also something at the base layer of natural relationships that gets broken, and then the disease comes after the natural relationships are broken, i.e., in the natural state where a woman expects this from a man and a woman expects that and a man expects this from a woman in the context of nature, and a man has to be able to deliver what the female nature calls for, right? And the female has to be operating upon quote unquote natural standards of expectation. She can't have distorted model in her mind. And I know we're way too late on so many levels of it, but I'm saying this is what I'm talking about. Once it got broken, then the natural perception of women have been distorted. So therefore, their perception in the cases that I'm speaking of that are diseased in such a way, that's not every woman, but those who are diseased in that way, and which seem to also be getting. This is where the media and other sources, the role that they play is that they may not necessarily start a trend, but then once a trend is seen and they see the value of that trend from a corporate profit perspective, then they'll put the magnifying glass on that thing and promote it and project it in the media such that those people who are behind the electronic curtain, they think it's such a big and very more popular thing. Then that's also, speaking of influence, there's another invisible influences. That's another book you might want to look into. That is in the nature of human beings to imitate and be influenced. That's our nature, to imitate and be influenced. But the science actually shows that only 5% of the society are innovators. 95% of society are imitators, and that's what makes society really possible. It's like we need creative people to create and generate the kind of inventions and solve the kind of problems that need to be solved for us. But once that problem has been solved by an innovator, everybody else only needs to imitate. Just do what he did, do what she did, and then that will solve the problem. So in a healthy society, okay, good, everything's wonderful because you have good creations and therefore people imitating good things, right? So, but when you get into a society where the creativity gets twisted and utilized for corrupt creations, right? And then the magnifying glass is put on the corrupt creation, and then the influenceable nature of the human being sees that magnified image that, oh, okay, well, that's what's happening. Let's go, And so we wind up imitating and therefore reinforcing and creating a corrupt culture. Uh, Listen to this, by nature. It happens because somebody understood this about our nature that we didn't understand about our nature. And in consequence of that, they were able to manipulate our nature above our heads or beneath our consciousness to behave in a way that we think is natural and correct and proper because of that very nature. And so, therefore, we wind up going down the wrong road thinking that it's right and defending the wrong with our lives. And that's crime too. And Satan made their ill deeds fair seeming. That's what's happening right now. That's what's happening in our world right now. And so that's what, like the guinea worm example that I mentioned, it's like that's when we have to. That's why, and also you have to make conscious decisions to be contrarian to what is popular in the mass that is clearly against the values for the human being that lead to the destiny of the human being as intended by Allah. That's the work of the ones who are serving Allah against the forces that are coming against the destiny and the plan of Allah for the human being, right? And so that's the work. You have to understand it. And I'm only telling right at this moment. I'm only focusing on one dimension of it. So therefore, when the natural relationships get broken and men don't have the mahar, let's call it mahar. The mahar is a dowry, and this is in nature. Al-Islam has just formalized what nature brings. It just makes it. Al-Islam just makes it conscious. What is that? It's like you have the female and the male. The female and the male. In order for the males of the species to get the females of the species, that is, she has to accept him. He has to qualify at a certain level by nature in order for her to get, no matter how much she really wants, she cannot open the door to him until he brings the right key for her lock. And the right key for her lock is the quote unquote skills to pay the bills. I'm keeping it simple. I'm keeping it simple. That's from, I'm talking about from butterflies to birds. Well, let's just say the birds and the bees. But when you live in a society where more and more men are unable to measure up to the woman's natural requirements, then that means, listen, many of these mass murders and other, they have been carried out by excuse me. Some kind of overdoing it this morning. Have been carried out by men and women. That's certainly one of the most recent ones, by a girl who was being a boy or wanted to be a boy, whatever. So this gender confusion issue, and the men who had done it, one of them was dressed like a woman when he was doing the murders, and the girl, she was dressed like a man when she was doing the killing. And then you have these what is called incels, involuntary celibates. They're called incels, involuntary celibate. Why? Because women don't want to have anything to do with them, so they can't get the girls. Then they can't get the girls. That's a problem. And women, they have their own particular set of problems as relate to that. So what I'm talking about, when the economic bounds and the economic wherewithal that creates situations where a male can meet the requirements of the female such that they can come into the natural relationships that they should have, but if the economic wherewithal to do so for any group of males, whether it be rednecks or niggas or whatever, I'm being a little crass on this right now. Well, then the problem is going to be the same. Then what happens? Homosexuality. Homosexuality is it's kind of like a natural byproduct of broken economies, right? I'm gonna put it simple that way for right now, because okay, so you have a guy that has whatever the needs he has for the satisfaction of that itch, all right, and the women who have the same need from a biological passion perspective. Okay, but nobody acceptable can be found across the aisle. Okay, well, I guess it's me and you. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. All right, so then it's like the men and the women, they go into the business of, men say, I'll be your woman. Who are you talking to? He's talking to a man. I'll be your woman, right? Since you can't find a woman, do they talk like that? No. It's like, I don't think so. It's like, since you can't find, I'll be your woman, right? I'm a real woman, right? And the rest is history on that. Okay, same way with the female on the other side. Why? Because the natural relationship that would happen from this, especially from this economic perspective, because there's not going to be this matchup, because those economic needs wherewithal are not going to be met, and so therefore there's a natural inability to get together across the aisle. So therefore you got to stay home. All right. So okay, let's not get lost in the sauce. Here we go. So the point is that for Muslim, you need to establish your economy. We need to establish our economy. And I don't even talk about education. The education and prison pipeline is also a reality too. But you have to have your own education system, because there's so many things that start at the grade school level having to do with discrimination and racism and misinterpretation, misunderstanding, shortcomings in vision from the teachers to the administrations of the institutions themselves that lead naturally to prison, right? So this is why, therefore, Muslims, well, tekum minkum ummah. Ummah includes all of these things. You got to get your family deal straight. You got to get your intellectual deal straight. You got to get your ritual, religious life straight. You have to get your psychology and mentality straight. And you have to get your pockets straight. You have to get your wealth straight. You have to get your property straight. Muslim, this is your job. So you can look at the world. You can listen to CNN, or you look at Fox News. You can look, wherever you wanna look, and you look at all the problems. You know what, Muslim, you're the one who's supposed to be laying down the solution. You are in possession of the solution to it, and the solution is the growth and implementation of al-Islam in the world. I believe Ismail Farouki, rahimahullah, I haven't heard it said better, but by similar ideas from Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah. But he said, Farouki, he said the responsibility of the engaged Muslim is to create a value-filled world. A value-filled world. Right? So, wherever you look around, we can just stick with all those: family, intellect, religion, the self, and property. We look at those features of the nature of society where we are, locally and nationally. okay, is our family what it should be? Are the family values uh, that we see established in the society today, are they the family values of Al Islam? How about the intellectual values? Are the intellectual values of Al Islam? How about the religious and ritual values? Are those religious and ritual values the values of Al Islam? How about the values for mental health? Right, the values for mental health and the sense of self. Are those values for mental health and the sense of self that are established in the world? Are they the ones that are intended by Allah for the human being? Okay, how about wealth? The attitudes and the value for wealth that Allah intends for the human being, is that's what's established in the world? To the extent that they are not, that's the job of the Muslim. Well, takum minkum ummah, then you Muslim bring the family values, the intellectual values, the ritual and religious values, the self, the mental health values, and also the wealth values. Muslim, that's your job. So it's not about. It's like, who are you thinking? Who's going to do something about it? Oh man, look at this, man. These people. Okay, stop. I say stop right there. It's okay. All right, now who's supposed to do something about it? Who? Police? White House? Who? It's the Muslim job, right? It's the Muslim job. And so the point is, again, the wax on, wax off idea is that, look, if we just do in every one of those areas what Allah told us to do, it will have the domino effect of curing the problem for the whole society in that arena. Because the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered for us to do, they are universal relative to human impact. It's like prayer has a universal impact on the human being. Charity has a universal impact on the human being. Fasting has a universal impact on the human being, and so on and so forth. All right, let's move to this. I really wanted to, and I am gonna go ahead and do it. I was gonna play the since time is I've taken as much time as I have. Let's go on to this part where it says, nor kill or destroy yourselves. So that's the order, nor kill or destroy yourselves. But literally, the verse says, La taqtulu anfusakum. Don't kill yourselves. And of course, that says something about suicide, right? Suicide. And do not we see the growth of suicide in the society at large, and among Bilalians, and even among those who are deemed to be successful, right? So, but where is that coming from? What is the source of that? So much of that has to do with eating up your property and vanities among yourselves, because clout chasing, which is trying to get status, trying to be a shot caller, trying to be a baller, trying to be someone who's seen as having high status, and then who raps about how whoever is not at my status and can't be at my status, you mad at me because you ain't me. All the rest of that is like, that's what leads to the deaths. Okay. So, and also killing yourself, the Flash comes to mind right now, DMX. And then you had, I don't know, his name is Williams. The guy had the scar comes across his face. He was one of the big names in The Wire. Another glorification of ghetto life series. So murder is just quote unquote a way of life in the hood because of the conditions. Yes, there are prior conditions, but don't get lost in thinking that it's because of what somebody else is doing to us. On one level, yeah, but another level, when you rise to the level of being the man that Allah, the human being that Allah created you to be, then you can't be played in certain ways. You don't participate in certain things because you're human. You're not, an animal. Think about the Bible. and one the donkey spoke with a man's voice, right? um, and that's critical for us to understand. Let's go ahead and this is don't kill yourself. So it's like murder. The murder in the hood is a growth industry, right? It's a growth industry. We talked about the luxury cars, how Black Americans spent $6 billion on luxury cars. So it's not a question we don't have the money. The $6 billion spent on luxury cars was an increase over the 3.9 billion I spent 2010. I went over these numbers in the khutbah, so I don't want to stay there. The Gini coefficient, we explained that. 50 Cent pointed out that a lot of the hip hop homicides are robberies because he said that the guys make the mistake of going back to the neighborhoods, which they were, doing what they were doing on the block, and then they made it out of the block and they made this money, etc. And then they come back to the block just like, like nothing's changed. But yeah, everything has changed, and they failed to recognize it in this clip that 50 Cent was speaking of. Is they fail to recognize somebody will kill you for $5,000. It's like $5,000 is, life is cheap, as we said. That, that's the mistake that they make, right? And that has to do with the Gini coefficient because you're amplifying the inequality of wealth position and status, etc. And that's what creates the Cain and Abel. I'm just making it abbreviated. That makes even though it's not, it's not that the one who was killed was so righteous, but you get the analogy. The idea is that when you come in, we used to be like this, and then you blew up like that, and now here you come back in here flexing and flossing like you got this going on. I know you, I knew you then, etc. And if I ain't eating from what you're bringing, well then I'm gonna take from what you have, right? And then, as is in Snoop Dogg language, murder was the case, right? So I mentioned here social Darwinism, right? Ayn Rand. I was reading a piece or a video that whatever YouTube shorts where Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court Justice. You rarely hear him speak, but in this case, he's talking about his early exposure to literature and knowledge and information, and he's identified in this clip as being someone who was exposed to Ayn Rand and who learned a lot from her. That's Atlas Shrugged, Fountainhead, all that. And objectivism, which is the philosophy, and basically I'm trying to cut it short, the objectivism means don't care about anybody but yourself. That's the real bottom line. You don't make sacrifices for other people, don't feel a moral responsibility to make sure that other people are okay. That's the actual philosophy of Ayn Rand. And you have those people, major government figures, legislators who use that as a foundation for their thinking and for their legislating, and whose constituency are people who subscribe to that, which is this kind of social Darwinism. Is like some people are born to be predators and some people are born to be prey. I'm being real raw about it, but that's what they mean. It's survival of the fittest means that if you survive, it means you were the fittest, right? Natural selection is that, look, if you weren't qualified through history to get to a point where you're able to defend yourself, protect yourself, and what have you, well then you are food to be eaten. That's what social Darwinism has in mind. So when it comes to legislation, since people who believe this way believe that it's out of our hands, it's nature. They say the condition of blacks, and even the fact that we were able to enslave them, make slaves out of them for 400 years and what have you. Well, that was Darwin said. Well, that was survival of the fittest. That was the natural selection. That it just so happened that we just happen to be on top and y'all happen to be on the bottom, and that's nature. You can't blame us for what's going on in nature. right? So, which means also for them, and this is the case where we're not going to write we're not going to write any laws to try to rectify the matter, because the matter was a natural situation. So it's like it's not anybody's fault per se. That's just the way that it was, right? So when you try to write legislation, you want to write legislation to correct all that, then that's actually unnatural. All right. So these people, and they will look at, it's just like those who want to promote, quote unquote, alternative lifestyle. They try to point out wherever some kind of example of where their homosexuality or whatever it is, some phenomena like that in nature, and gender switching or something like among whatever, catfish or shrimp or seahorses or something like that. And that becomes their don't worry, I don't think catfish one of those, but there is some fish that do that. I think it is seahorses, I'm not sure. So when the population of some creature in nature goes down to such a level, then they'll actually start switching genders. But that's in nature, etc. But then some people who might use that as do use that as a standard, they use that as a justification. And I'm saying to you that there are those who look at nature in such a way and seek to interpret it and abstract from it ways of being in human society that would give them an advantage or a justification or rationalization to act in inhuman ways. Okay, let's go ahead and look at something else right here. This example I want to. So this is. Let's see. Which one do I want to show? We talked about, let's go ahead and go with this one. I talked about the ruby wasp. I talked about the ruby wasp relative to the caterpillar. I want to show you this one with the no. Let's go with it. Let's go with the caterpillar. All right. I don't know how long it is. So now this caterpillar, I say this, this caterpillar has already been stung by a ruby wasp, something called a jewel wasp as well. So the narration begins from the perspective of talking about this creature that's been stung, and the eggs of the wasp have been laid inside of this caterpillar. And now it's going on telling you what has happened after so many days of this caterpillar engorging itself, as it does by nature. All right? Continue.
Our parasitized caterpillar has spent the last 12 days gorging itself. It now appears profoundly obese. But this is not all fat. The glomerata wasp larvae lie just under its skin. Each is the size of a grain of rice, but together they account for over a third of the caterpillar's weight. The larvae have not yet finished growing and need to keep their host alive. So although they feast on the caterpillar's blood, they have been careful not to touch a single one of its vital organs. This uneasy truce will not last. Within days, the larvae are fully matured. Suddenly, they begin to stir into action. For the past 2 weeks, this surrogate womb has protected them, but now they no longer need it. To complete the next...
I'm sorry, I said it on pause. I'm sorry, I said it on pause. Blog Talk, I kind of quote, forgot about you in the context of, I don't know how this sound is coming through to you, if at all. But I guess one of the things to do is, if need be, to go over to my Facebook page or YouTube, also to see it. I'm gonna leave it on. Those of you who are in touch with me. Oh, okay. So exactly. Oh, thanks, man. All right, so I'm gonna let it go.
Stage of their life cycle, they must break out. The caterpillar's thick skin should be a solid barrier to the parasitic wasp larvae. But as their bodies have grown, they have developed tiny, saw-like teeth. These jagged jaws are for one job only: cutting their way out. Stroke by stroke, the larvae slice through the tough layers of skin. At the same time, they release chemicals that paralyze the caterpillar. As the larvae break through, there is nothing it can do. Free at last, the larvae enter a new phase of development. They swiftly spin silken cocoons. These will provide the perfect environment for their final transformation. But ironically, one of the greatest dangers the larvae will face is being themselves impregnated by other species of parasitic wasp. Incredibly, the wounded caterpillar helps them out. Usually, a caterpillar would spin a silken blanket to make its own cocoon. But the parasitized caterpillar spins his blanket on top of the wasp cocoons, giving them an extra layer of protection. Scientists believe the same wasp virus that infected it weeks before has now invaded the caterpillar's brain and caused this bizarre corruption of its normal behavior. Amazingly, the caterpillar's natural aggression is now also exploited by the wasp virus. The caterpillar becomes a bodyguard, actively protecting the cocoons from other parasites. It will watch over them unceasingly until it eventually starves to death.
So let's take this out. All right, so you saw what happened. So with regard to this condition, one thing comes to mind right away: drugs. It's like with drugs in the picture, the mentality is directing the behavior. Okay, it's the same thing exactly in the hood. Take drugs out of the hood, you lose this kind of behavior, but with drugs in it, it also impacts the mind. Let's go on with another. Remove this and want to. Yes, this is one of the cockroaches. This is one of those that I was
In the
originally
African
exposed
savannah
to.
lives a very interesting creature. This is Ampulex compressa, the jeweled cockroach wasp. She is on the hunt for something. And this is it, a cockroach. She approaches it carefully as the roach is far bigger than she is. Once she is close enough, she strikes, stinging it twice. The first sting disables the roach's front legs. The second she delivers directly into the insect's brain. But this does not kill the roach, nor is it even paralyzed. The wasp's venom simply disables the roach's escape reflex. Were you to turn on the light, it would not scatter. While the venom begins to take effect, the roach grooms itself compulsively. The wasp waits nearby. Having waited long enough, the wasp returns to her prey. Vibrating her wing muscles like this allows her to sever the roach's antenna. Scientists think that by tasting the roach's blood, she can gauge how effective her sting has been. Too little venom and the roach will recover before she is done with it. Too much and it may die too soon. Satisfied, the wasp leads the stupefied insect to her burrow. She probes the roach's body, looking for just the right place. Once she has found it, she lays on it a single egg. The roach is not sustenance for her, but rather for her young. Now she must protect her investment. She carefully seals the burrow with twigs and rocks. A process that may take 30 minutes or more. Inside the burrow, the roach remains, alive and well, but unable to escape. the egg will soon hatch. As a grub, the young insect will bore its way into the cockroach's body and consume its internal organs in the order most likely to keep it alive for as long as possible. 1 month later, a new wasp emerges. Ready to begin the process again.
Okay, so you see these forces, these creatures doing what they do, and I want us to understand that that's the model that's being used. That is a model of what is happening. All right. I don't think it's an accident that it's a wasp. A wasp, it is what it is. What is a wasp? White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. That's a wasp, right? So that the label is just there, right? And in terms of that society, so you have that society that's being supported by the demise and the exploitation and the predatory how do you say practices and principles being applied to the boys in the hood. Let's keep going so we can get in a little more. We're going to be maybe at least 10, 15 minutes over, but let's go to okay, let me hit you with this real quick. It's a shorter one, so you can do that. Private prison, right?
In the state of Arizona, this is legalized racial profiling.
The detention of migrants is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
One in which immigrants are traded like products.
They are for sale to the highest bidder.
Who benefits and who profits? Corrections Corporation of America, or CCA, the GEO Group, and the Management and Training Corporation combined own over 200 facilities in the nation.
With over 150,000 bed spaces for a total profit of close to $5 billion per year.
Private prisons profit like a hotel. The more occupants that go in, the more money comes out.
You just sell it like you're selling cars, or real estate, or hamburgers.
Private prisons rely on anti-immigrant laws that guarantee them access to fresh inmates.
Here's how they do it. The American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC, is an extreme right-wing membership organization comprised of state legislators and powerful multinational corporations, including the Corrections Corporation of America.
ALEC is the most active private prison lobbyist group pushing for anti-immigrant laws like Arizona's SB 1070.
Russell Pierce, like CCA, is an ALEC member, one with obscure ties to national white separatist neo-Nazi groups. During an ALEC meeting, CCA and Pierce crafted a model legislation that became, almost word for word, Arizona's SB 1070.
Whether people are undocumented or not doesn't matter.
As long as they fill the detention facilities for days, months, or even years.
SB 1070 and their copycat laws sprouting up across the country represent the perfect money machine.
So that's just because it's so short. That's the reason I played that. But the immigrants, the migrants, the immigrants, etc., have become the second go-to property for that operation because of the federal government cutting itself off explicitly from funding private prisons. In that sense, so they went for another criminalized group which are the migrants. Even though you just you can just go online and look, you can find many examples also of it. But I want to continue to dovetail or work through this feature here. Now I want to bring it to the hip hop situation here. Right. This is a little bit longer, but you need to hear it so you can be exposed to it and work that out, because this is so the prison. One of the things about the prison piece is that ruby wasp dragged that cockroach into a private prison. Just make it simple like that. You're not there. You're not dead, but you can't escape, and you will serve my interest. I will take your life to feed my life and future generations. That's the prison system, and that's the wasp moving the cockroach, Negroes, etc., and now migrants into the private prison system in order to profit. Now let's look at what the hip hop community has to do with this.
The letter is
90 seconds.
the secret meeting that changed rap music and destroyed a generation. Damn. So it says, hello. After more than 20 years, I finally decided to tell the world what I witnessed in 1991, which I believe was one of the biggest turning points in popular music and ultimately American society. I have struggled for a long time weighing the pros and cons of making my story public, as I was reluctant to implicate the individuals who were present that
Blog
day.
Talk, stay on.
So I simply decided to leave out the names and all the details that may risk my personal well-being and that of those who were, like me, dragged into something they weren't ready for. Damn. Hold on, let me So we gonna tell the story. We gonna tell the story. We ain't scared. You know what I'm saying? What they gonna do? They after us, not straight. Look, like when? So look. So he says, between the late 80s and early 90s, I was what you may call a decision maker with one of the more established companies in the music industry. I came to Europe in the early 80s and quickly established myself in the business. The industry was different back then, since technology and media weren't accessible to people like that, like they are today. The industry had more control over the public and had the means to influence them any way it wanted. Right. This may explain why in early 1991, I was invited to attend a closed-door meeting with a small group of business insiders to discuss rap music's new direction. Rap music's new direction. Yeah. Little did I know we would be asked to participate in one of the most unethical and destructive business practices ever seen. Crazy. So this was the meeting. The meeting was held at a private residence on the outskirts of Los Angeles. I remember about 25 to 30 people were being there. Right. Most of them familiar faces. Speaking of those I knew, we joked about the theme of the meeting, as many of us did not care for rap and failed to see the purpose of being invited to a private meeting to discuss the future of hip-hop. Talk to them. Among the attendees was a small group of unfamiliar faces who stayed to themselves and made no attempt to socialize beyond their circle. Based on their behavior and formal appearances, they didn't seem to be from our industry. Our casual chatter was interrupted when we were asked to sign a confidentiality agreement preventing us from publicly discussing the information presented during the meeting. Needless to say, this intrigued, in some cases, disturbed many of us. The agreement was only a page long, but very clear on matters and consequences, which stated that violating the terms would result in job termination immediately. We asked several people what this meeting was about and the reason for such secrecy, but could not find anyone who had the answers for us. A few people refused to sign and walked out. Nobody stopped them. I was tempted to follow, but but curiosity got the best of me.
That's right.
A man who was part of the unfamiliar group collected all the agreements from us. So now it's going to get to the good part because the meeting about to start.
Talk to him, Jake.
It says, quickly after the meeting began, hold on 1 second.
Get your popcorn, y'all.
Popcorn, get your pistol. No,
real though.
Quickly after this meeting began, one of the industry colleagues, who shall remain nameless like everybody else, thanked us for attending. He then gave the floor to a man who only introduced himself by first name and gave no other details about his personal background. I think he was the owner of the residence, but that was never confirmed. He briefly praised all of us for the success we had achieved in our industries and congratulated us for being selected as part of this small group of decision makers. At this point, I began to feel slightly uncomfortable and the strangeness of this gathering. The subject quickly changed as the speaker went on to tell us that the respective companies we represented had invested in a very profitable industry, which could become even more rewarding with our active involvement. He explained that the companies we worked for had invested millions into the building of privately owned prisons, and that our positions of influence in the music industry would actually impact the profitability of these investments. Then he says, I remember many of us in the group immediately looking at each other in awe and confusion. At the same time, I didn't know what a private prison was, but I wasn't the only one. Sure enough, someone asked what these prisons were and what any of this had to do with music. We were told that these prisons were built by privately owned companies who received funding from the government based on the number of inmates. The more inmates, the more the government would pay these prisons. It was also made clear to us that since these prisons are privately owned, as they become publicly traded, we'd be able to buy shares. Most of us were taken back by this. Again, a couple of people asked what this had to do with us. At this point, my industry colleague who had first opened the meeting took the floor again and answered our questions. He told us that since our employees had become silent investors in this prison business, it was now in their interest to make sure that these prisons remain filled. Our job would be to help make this happen by making music which promote criminal behavior, rap being the music of choice. He assured us that this would be a great situation for us because rap music was becoming an increasingly profitable market for our companies. And as employees, we'd also be able to buy stocks in these prisons. Immediately, silence came over the room. You could have heard a pin drop. I remember looking around to make sure I wasn't dreaming and saw half of the people with dropped jaws. My daze was interrupted when someone shouted, "Is this a fucking joke?" At this point, things became chaotic.
Right.
Two of the men who were part of the unfamiliar group grabbed the man who shouted and attempted to remove him from the house. A few of us, myself included, tried to intervene. One of them pulled out a gun, and we all backed off. They separated us from the crowd, and all four of us was escorted outside. My industry colleague who opened up the meeting earlier hurried out to meet us and reminded us that we had signed an agreement and would suffer the consequences of speaking out about this publicly or even those who attended the meeting.
Damn.
I asked him, why was he involved with something so corrupt? And he replied, it's bigger than the music business and nothing we can do. And it's bigger than the music business and nothing we want to challenge without risking consequences. We all protested as we walked back into the house. I remember word for word, the last thing he said, "It's out of my hands now. Just remember you signed an agreement." He then closed the door behind him. The men rushed us to our car and actually waited until we drove off the property.
Damn.
So this meeting, bro.
Now that's a lot for a meeting right there.
Oh yeah, definitely. And this person later on, he said, this person actually ended up leaving the music industry. After this happened, a few years after this, he ended up leaving the music industry.
Okay.
And he'd say he just like, over the years, he just felt guilty because he said as he sat back and he watched these plans come to a reality
over 2 decades,
he sat back and was like, wow, they really pulled it off.
Yeah.
They really pulled this off. He was like, they were told not to sign any more political rappers, any more rappers that had messages in their music.
No positivity.
It was all to be gangster rap music that they promoted and put out.
So if you wonder where Brand Nubians went, where Poor Righteous Teachers went, where Public Enemy went, where KRS-One went, and all sorts of groups like that was talking, even Queen Latifah and Moni Love and those, you know what I'm saying? It's a back door.
Yeah, anything that was harmless, fun rap, anything that had a message in it had to go.
Yeah, that's why if you even notice though,
we talk about that all the time.
Even be brief with it, you know what I'm saying? Those charms that came out like maybe in 1988, 89, the African charms, those they lasted for about 2 years and they disappeared real quick. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. Now, after reading all this, it actually made me feel a few different ways. The first emotion I felt was shocked because I was definitely taken back by this, just knowing the level of evil that's involved by even thinking of a plan like this. You know what I'm saying? The second emotion I felt was anger. Anger because it's not enough for them to exploit our culture and make all the money off of it. Mm-hmm. Because let's keep it real, the industry has never been favorable towards the artists. Never. But they're going to go beyond the artists to get the artist to influence and lure in the consumer, which they knew at the time were mainly minorities.
Yep.
In other words, keep promoting gangster rap so that the youngsters will be influenced by them, which in turn will incite them to want to act like them. And it's a very good chance they'll end up in their prison.
Yeah.
So they're getting paid twice. They're getting paid from the artists they signing, and then they're getting paid from the people that these artists influence that goes to prison trying to be like these artists.
Yeah.
So they making a killing.
A killing.
They're using the music business to promote their private prison business.
If my man is right there talking that right. 1988, a man named Tom Beasley, man. That's the co-founder of the corrections for Corporation of America. It's the CCA. You know what I'm saying? Excuse my French. I'm reading this thing right there real quick. It's the CCA. So in 1988, he founded that, and this is in straight concert with the same thing. So it's like the music business. You do what you do on your side, and over here with the correction facilities, we're gonna do on this side because. And now in 1970, there was 500 prisons. You know what I'm saying? Only 500 prisons in the United States. To this day, there's 1,700 prisons right now. That means big business. I'm talking about that done flippled over. You know what I'm saying? If flippled over is a word. Because they're making a lot of money off of these things per inmate. You know what I'm saying? So getting with the same thing of the music, it all went hand in hand, and we just partying at the same time.
So us as the artists is the tool they use.
Yeah.
The music is the bait. Yep. And the young consumers are the prey. It's a cold game.
Cold game, bro.
Cold game. Then I feel sad. Sad because everything we seem to try to create, we always seem to give it away. We're always being tricked and deceived into believing that they have our best interests at hand when clearly they never have and they never will. They never will have our best interests at hand. It's blow after blow after blow after blow.
Yeah. And so that's Crazy Bone from Bone Thugs and Harmony, who's reading that. One more thing, begging your patience for the morning. One more thing that I want to just display to you and see if we can do it quick. But you grown, obviously, so you got to go where you got to go, do what you got to do. I don't like to take a lot of your time, but I don't want to leave disconnected some pieces that you should connect, and you should go back, review, reflect on, because it is the model for what was described there, and the model for the system as it is operating in our lives right now is explicitly like what was happening with the caterpillar and the wasp. You know, the consumption of the caterpillar promoted by what the wasp did to the caterpillar, and how its consumption is its life support. And then also the prison system you can see in the ruby wasp and the caterpillar, and the role that it plays once the drug, and the drug affects both of them, right? The drug in its effect is such that the behavior is coming from the drugs. I'm talking about the drug that comes out of the ruby wasp into the caterpillar, out of the ruby wasp into the cockroach, is what makes them behave in the way that they behave, which is in the interest of the wasp, who has zombified them and who has, cuckooed, as they call them, also like the cuckoo bird. It's like they're planting their eggs in your body and getting their life from your life, and you think that it's your life that you're supporting. You're not supporting your life at all. The parasite is taking everything from you. That's the life. Real quick here, Imam Muhammad makes this statement: the highest knowledge of man in society is the science of his spirituality. And believe me, you're not ruled by guns. You're not subdued because of great physical knowledge. You're subdued because there are people in this world who know more about your spirituality than you do. And they're able to use the tools of science that they have regarding your spirituality to manipulate you and keep you under adverse spirit. Let me say this right now. Be very, very clear. Do not think that some scientist somewhere, perhaps even with government support, has abstracted what they know about the chemical structure of that particular venom from that wasp and how it affects cockroaches and caterpillars. Do not think that they have not tried to synthesize that drug to see how and if it can influence human beings in a particular way. Do not think that. You would be very naive to think that, okay, well, let's see if we can make it work on a human being. No, it's not going to be, well, it could be published somewhere. I haven't had a chance to really go and ask that question. But that is one of the quick questions I'm going to ask at some point in time. Has any scientific studies ever been made on the ruby wasp venom and its impact in a human being? That would be my question. So if anybody can note that question, do that. Yeah, go ahead. Do the chat GPT, do the perplexity AI, all that. Do that and see if you come up with anything. Let me know if you do. Moving on. Here's this image of Isis right here. And this image of Isis, without going into her whole history, the Ankh being the key of life, the thing that stands out always for me, and it should for you, is that, listen, the woman has two right hands. She has two right. This is a right hand on the left arm, right? What does it say? So the left means unconscious, but then the right means conscious. So what does it mean? That there are people who are conscious of your unconscious, and that's the key of life for them. They're able to control and manipulate the life of a society and of a person because of what they consciously know about the person's unconscious and what the person does not know about their own unconscious. That's what's operating. That's what's going on. All this finger popping, booty shaking, whatever that's going on with us, that is under the pure manipulation of a social elite, cultural elite, economic and political elite who see us as cockroaches and caterpillars. Okay, moving on. So all these symbols of that ancient knowledge, we're surrounded by it all the time. It's in your pockets. It's in the capital city. It's in the museum displays and representation. It's the same wisdom continue to work and operate right here in America. And so this idea is also a part of the Egyptian mythology that's being used against us as well. Isis' dog, right, is called Anubis. It's a black man dog. The dog is black, and it's a black man dog, right? In the Egyptian mystery system, he is the god who helped to embalm. That's a little premature. We're not going to get to Miss Beyonce today, but she made her deal. She signed on the dotted line too. I know you don't want to hear that, some of you, but yeah, she signed on the dotted line. Moving on. In the Egyptian mystery system, he is the god who helped to embalm Osiris. Who is Osiris? Osiris, it represents the preserved dead leadership. It's dead leadership, but it's being preserved. All right. And the one who's overseeing the dead leadership is Anubis, the black dog. What's up, dog? What's up? That's my dog, man. That's my road dog. Okay. So Isis is the Anubis is the black man dog in the Egyptian mystery system. He's a god who helped to embalm Osiris after he was killed by Set. Set, which represents the loss of the value for leadership. Once we have no respect for leadership, once we don't embrace leadership, and once we reject leadership and the rejection, we don't need another hero. All right. Once we reject leadership as a value, as a standard, that's the death. That's the mindset. The mind has been set, the loss of the value for leadership, and then Anubis comes in, and he watched over the process of mummification. And what is mummification? Wrap. It's a wrap. That's what, when something comes to an end, you say, well, it's a wrap, right? So you put it in a wrap, keep that under wraps. You're talking about secrecy, right? So this wrap, and Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah, he points out to us, he said, look, wherever there's a silent letter, there's a secret. Wherever there's a silent letter, there's a secret. So when I have W-R-A-P, that's wrap, where's the silent letter? The W. So what's the real message? Rap. That's the message. So they call it rap. Do you think we decided to call it rap? Come on now. Come on now. So what, mummy, right? And mummy rhymes with dummy, right? So, and that's it. And I know in the Bay Area they had this thing like "Go dummy, go stupid." That was the whole message, you know, as a part of that rap, right? And then while reigning over, so it's the process, they watch over the process of mummification while reigning over and preserving the leadership of death. The death was glorified, is glorified. It's a culture of death, right? Diamonds in the skull and all these other things. Death is the thing. You say, who is it? Biggie, he said, you're nobody till somebody kills you, right? And then this zombified caterpillar, you'll remember in the piece that I shared with you, is that a part of the effect of the drug in the caterpillar's mind is that they no longer are serving their own life such that they can transform into the butterfly that they are intended to be, or the winged creature that they're intended to be. Now all of that nature is being used to serve the one who has parasitized and zombified them, and so they fight with their life to protect the life of the one who their predator, right? So once the larvae came out of the caterpillar, then the caterpillar is still alive, but with the last of its life, it protects the life of the one that took their life from them, so that they would have their own life. That's Anubis. That's Anubis. They are reigning over the preserving of the dead leadership in our community. They protect that way of life, that attitude, that philosophy, those people who speak from that perspective. They say, I can't say no when I'm too busy saying yeah, right? I know that's old, but that's there. So, and that's what the whole lifestyle, the whole message is about, preserving the death that reigns over the hood, right? Okay, so that's enough for one day, I think. So, mashallah, that's going to be it for today. Inshallah, we can bring it back at another time, have more converse about it, but we're done. We're going to be out. So, greetings to those that we haven't had the opportunity to greet. Hafiza, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Latifa, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, yeah. Ali Hada Ali, alhamdulillah. You're going mayhem this morning, Sheikh, mashallah. All right. Thank you, Latifa, as well. Shukur, greeting to the tribe, alhamdulillah. And alhamdulillah, shukran, so powerful, shukran. Ahmed, oh my Lord. Yes, yes. Zakia, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That's it. Everybody have a wonderful day. Allah's peace be on you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.